Welcome back to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. My name is Sona, and I am called Ajahn Sona. And we are back from a little hiatus. The last you saw me was during the 7 Factors of Enlightenment retreat, which was held from the 26th of December to the 31st. 6 full talks and 5 questions and answers. And one of the questions we thought we would ask our listeners or participants in the retreat, just to check you out how sharp you are, how close you were listening, I mentioned something called the 37 requisites of enlightenment, the Bodhipakya Dhamma. And the 7 factors are one island amongst this little archipelago of teachings. And then we thought, why don't we see if any of our listeners could estimate how many of those that I mentioned in some way or another during the retreat. A little bit of a quiz, Dhamma quiz. And so, if you would care to submit an answer, and when you submit an answer, just don't pick a number. Give a little bit of, fill in a little bit of why you thought that was the number. And because there's a lot of different answers that are perfectly valid and right. There's not just one answer. It depends on context and overlaps, etc. So just for sharpening up and reflecting on all these things. If during this time you want to submit one to the comment or the sidebar, the chat, yes, the chat, feel free. And in the meantime, let us begin, Pia, with some sort of... Oh, yes, by the way, we had a poll. We have a poll. And this is what our response to our poll was. How many of the 37 requisites of enlightenment did I mention during the talk? And here we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Now, it's not all that easy to actually turn my head that far. So 22% of you said I only mentioned 19 of them. Others, 11%, 28, 7%, 33, 35, 4%, and 37, the safe answer, 37, 57% of you thought that I had mentioned all 37 of them. Now, it's interesting. We should do a little psychology test on this. Like, were they just like covering all their bases on this? So this is our viewer, our auditor poll, our participant poll, or a wild guess. Now, we shall go back to Pia to begin with our questions.
Okay.
What is the first question, Pia?
Well, Ajahn, I want to give you a summary. A few people are posting their guesses. Mary Jane says 7. She doesn't say why, but just 7. We also have, let's see, Lake is saying, I think Ajahn mentioned 28 of the factors, not touching on faith, right intention, right speech, right action, or right livelihood. I think could also be 37. I need to go back and listen to the talks.
We're tricking everybody. We'll go and listen to the talks again, aren't we?
Kathy says, I'm guessing faith wasn't mentioned, question mark. But we also had some people submit questions in writing. So I want to read one of those answers that came into us from Diane in New Zealand. In answer to Ajahn question about how many of the 37 factors to enlightenment he articulated during the 7 Factors of Awakening retreat, here is what I heard, and is my response. All 37. All 37 path factors are included in the Four Noble Truths. Ajahn Sona articulated these in the Dhamma talk on mindfulness. Right mindfulness is the first of the 7 factors of awakening. the seventh factor of the Eightfold Path, and the third power of the 5 spiritual faculties. Right mindfulness cannot be separated from investigation of the Dhamma, the second of the 7 factors of awakening, and in the fourth of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which contains a drop-down menu with 5 bases for mindfulness. This is the recursive, intertwined structuring of the Buddha Dhamma. The 5 categories that comprise the 37 factors of awakening. Studied outside of our past retreat, I can still tally Ajahn articulating at least once all 37 factors of enlightenment. The use of desire or the will to act seems to be the least frequently mentioned, whereas mindfulness and investigating the Dhamma were taught daily. Many thanks for this opportunity to speak the Dhamma.
Well, that was an excellent answer. I will accept that as a prize-winning answer. We haven't decided about any prizes yet, but the prizes that you got, you increased your wisdom and investigating karma, which will blossom in the future for you. That's the prize. Yes, very good answer. It's not an absolute answer. There are other possible answers because there's not just one right answer, but that was very, very clever and articulate. Yes.
Ajahn, I want to turn it over to Bodhipala now, who also has an answer to your question.
Okay, Bodhipala.
Okay, and please know that this answer has some humor in it. It's being sincere and not very serious. So early on in the retreat, I noticed that Ajahn threw up a smokescreen with regards to this question. He was really trying to make sure that we would struggle to know whether he was connecting all the dots. He had a lot of words flying around: recursive structures, looping back, repeating, reiterating, interacting, interweaving, and there were numbers, lots of numbers. Surely he'd connected all the dots. So this morning I sat down with the podcasts on double speed with 15-second increment forwarding, fast forwarding. And I can't guarantee it's a perfect assessment, but here's what I noticed. So we're saying 7 factors of awakening, tick. 4 foundations of mindfulness, tick. 5 faculties, tick. And I double-checked on faith for those of you in the chat, because I too couldn't remember if he'd mentioned faith, but he did very clearly, and there was a good little section on it. The 4 exertions, all I can say is, who would dare to not tick this category, even though Ajahn did not specifically mention the word exertions, which is slightly different in the Pali from right effort. He is the monk of right effort. There's no way we're not giving him a tick on this one. The 5 powers tick because they merely indicate the maximum strength of the 5 faculties, which were well covered. But now we get onto dicier ground. So we have the 4 iddhipadas, and virya first would give a tick because its name and content are almost overlapping perfectly with other members of lists. Citta, tick because its name links it strongly to the 3rd foundation of mindfulness, and if one considers it to be about mental development, it extends overlapping with a lot of things that he was talking about. Vimamsa, tick. It has a different name, but it's pretty much, again, huge overlapping content with Dhammavichaya. Chanda, not explicitly mentioned by Ajahn, but once again can overlap with a lot of items on these lists, including faith, wisdom, right intention, and energy. Should we give him a tick for this one? Wait and see. The Eightfold Path. Well, the words Eightfold Path got used a lot. Maybe that was part of the smokescreen, I don't know. And then beyond the final 3 factors of the path, which overlap with the 7 factors of awakening, he only gave star billing really to one more path factor, which was right view. And as far as I could tell, as others in the chat have mentioned, he never used the words right intention, right speech, right livelihood, or right action. I could be wrong about that because it was a bit of a blur this morning. But, a huge but, there was a significant section on the development of generosity, kindness, and clarity, and he mentioned the Brahmaviharas many times, so right intention is there by implication, very strongly. And then there was a very brief little look at the need for good behavior as a necessary prerequisite for the development of the higher mind and the 7 factors. So technically, he did touch on every wing to awakening, however thinly. And this evaluation is going to give a tick for chanda, as covered by faith and energy, a tick for right intention, but say that the coverage of right action, right speech, and right livelihood was too thin to count. So I'm giving him 34 out of 37.
Corner, come over here. I want you in front of the camera so they can see. Now that was a sterling answer. Come. That's Bodhipala. She's one of the three ladies who make this show work. That's her answer. Now you know why we have these ladies here. They're very acute when it comes to Dhamma. Yes. So that I will give full marks for that, but there are other possibilities as well. Yes. Now let's go on. Pia, what shall we go to next?
Ajahn, we have just a couple more people who've included some answers, so I'm going to go with those. Ben Furman says 33, but doesn't tell us why. So there we go. Passaddiko says the poll responses.
Let's go. Ben's answer, 33.
33.
I like 33 because you could say that I didn't mention the Iddhipadas, the 4 Iddhipadas. So a nice 33 is a nice thing, the Iddhipadas, but from another point of view, they could be included, etc. Yes. Okay, so that's why we would say that's a reasonable answer, but we didn't flesh it out too much there, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we have one more response for now. We may come back to more later. Passaddiko says the poll responses were 101% amazing. 22, 11, 7, 4, and 57. Bob says, I'm not sure if this applies. I would apply for one of your positions, but for me, anything under 25C is cold to me. Oh, 25 centigrade. Celsius. Sorry. That really didn't apply to the question. But so there we are. I'm going to turn it over now to Metta, who has one more response.
Yes, we have an audio response from Manava, so I'll go ahead and play that.
Wow, that is a tough question. I'm going to restrain myself from binge listening to the whole retreat again and say I'm pretty sure that there were 33 of the 37 requisites mentioned. I think, or at least I don't recall, that the 4 bases of power were mentioned. But at any rate, I do want to remind Ajahn Sona that he did promise us a retreat on the 37 requisites, and so we should all hold him to that one.
Okay, well, thank you, Manava. And it's good to hear live voices. You get to hear... How many voices did you hear today? How many... you'll have to recall actual voices did you hear today? Were there 2, 3, or 4 voices? Yeah, so I would give that full marks as well. I say that I didn't speak specifically about the Iddhipadas. And so that's what Manava felt that was a fair assessment. So I also didn't speak specifically about the 5 powers. I did speak specifically about the 5 faculties. The 5 faculties are faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. And the 5 powers class are exactly the same: faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. But it's when the faculties, which are sort of basic capacities, are brought to development and achieve a certain strength, that they're effective all the time, then they're called powers. And so 28 would also be a good guess. So 33 is a good, not guess, but a good assessment. 28 is a good assessment. 37 is a good assessment. And there are other valid ways of thinking about it, how if one backs it up with thought. And I appreciate Bodhipala's answer that I didn't specifically talk about right action, right livelihood, etc. So there's a variety of numbers as long as you back it up with reasons. But mostly it just makes you a little sharper about Dhamma. And of course, this is the comprehensive collection of Dhamma structures that pretty well encapsulate the all of the central teachings of the Pali Canon, the Buddha of the Pali Canon. So yeah, if you now I should mention that we are going to reopen. The monastery is going to reopen in May, and we're going to have a retreat, which will be a 2-week retreat on the 37 requisites of enlightenment. And so this is tentatively arranged. It is a live retreat at the monastery, but it's all booked. It is a specific and fairly regular historical event. The supporters and abbot of the Pacific Hermitage in Washington State, usually on a yearly basis, come up here for the last 15 years and have a retreat with us here. And they will do that again, having missed 3 years now. We will attempt to reopen with that. And the abbot, Venerable Ajahn Sona, requested that I give a talk on, or give the whole retreat on the 37 requisites of enlightenment, which is, I agree to. It's a fairly compassionate request because there's lots of material there to explore. When you teach a 2-week retreat, it means that you have to give a talk, 14 talks in a row. And these talks that I give are more or less spontaneous, and they're usually on a theme for a retreat as well. And Ajahn Sona has, over the years, on various occasions, requested a certain topic, and I've always complied. However, the most horrifying one was the 2-week retreat on equanimity. Imagine trying to give 14 talks on equanimity. But I thought, well, that should be an interesting challenge. I'll give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. And by the way, so it's those are all recorded on the YouTube channel. And if you want to find out everything you can possibly say about equanimity, by all means, indulge in those talks on equanimity. There's, I think, 11 or 12 that I managed to get through. So let us go on to the next question, Pia. Yeah.
Ajahn, we'll return now to some of our questions. This was submitted by Tissa and Molly in Chilliwack, British Columbia, Canada. Ajahn Sona, there is so much good in the world, yet human negativity bias has been used by all channels of communication, including writers of great repute, who most often highlight tragedy, aggression, and violence. What does it take to change this around based on Buddhist ethics so our future generations could have more hope and clarity?
Well, that's very obvious these days that the abundance of media, primarily the internet, etc., but everything, the podcasts and so forth, are a way of saturating the entire population with massive amounts of information, misinformation, and disinformation. So you have some of it is motivated by deception, some of it's motivated by ill will, some of it is just malicious or of a nature of a prank. Some of it's very sincere, some of it's accurate, some of it's inaccurate. And what is a poor person to do? I mean, say you're 15 years old, I'm trying to sort through this. It's bad enough if you're a deeply educated and have a great depth of lived experience to try to sort through this stuff. But Buddhism does have a very, very helpful answer to this. I particularly found it a blessing in life to encounter the Dhamma attitudes to all kinds of situations, problematic situations in the world, and information that comes to you. And that is this an attitude of equanimity. So again, we're coming back to equanimity, is that it's not, your emotions are not captive to negative or positive events in your life or the life of the world. That success and failure happens to you, and it happens to everybody. Fame and obscurity is a possibility for yourself and for everybody. Good fortune, bad fortune, and ill health and good health. These are all these teeter-totter of possibilities in life. And that is to be looked at, and you're taught how to respond to both of those cases with a sense of balance and detachment. Your emotions are not tied to success in the world. Like, positive emotions are not, you're not obliged to produce positive emotions because of success or negative emotions because of failure. Neither demand an emotional response. Dhamma teaches you to not respond or react to the world, but to act towards the world, radiate towards the world, and you get to choose how you feel. In the midst of catastrophes and frauds and negative information, cruelty and hatred, and of course, loving kindness and all of these variety of things, you get to choose what to radiate towards all of that. And the Buddha advises that it is best to radiate loving kindness, which is always a very positive emotion, because if people are up to cruelty and so forth, they do this out of ignorance. They themselves will suffer greatly. People who are up to much mischief on the internet and in the media may not realize that it comes around. Whatever goes around comes around, as they say. It's called karma. That they themselves create negative results in their own mind, which are inescapable, the negative results of this kind of deliberate, intentional malice, deception, cruelty, chaos, etc. It always comes back to the person who it radiates out from. And also the opposite. When goodwill, clarity, generosity, kindness, and the proper distribution of the facts of reality, that also comes back as a reward to the one who gives it out positively. So justice just is. So the universe, from a Buddhist point of view, is balanced and reacting, and what is done with negativity, negative intention of speech and action has negative results, and nobody else has to find it out or anything. The universe the laws of the universe. I mean, we see it in physics where every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The tiniest movement is accounted for in this unfathomably massive universe. That lawful structure occurs also in the moral domain, the moral dimension, in the psychological dimension. And so you can relax that the universe has a certain orderliness in the human, psychological, and emotional dimension, and that you can be well, balanced, lucid, unperturbed by these things. And that's what especially young people should be told again and again. I mean, this is what function of, I suppose, good religion, which I call Buddhism, good religious teachings, and some of the good philosophical teachings of the wisdom traditions teach this, that in this world of cruelty and chaos and wars and terrible events, and of course, beautiful things as well, that one can walk through here in a state of self-given grace, self-wellness and peace. And your emotions don't rely on these structures. So the other aspect is then there should be a lot of courses about how to sort out what is true and what is not. And of course, you will notice that there are two types of discourse out there. One is rhetorical, which is appeal to the emotions, heavy functioning, loud, angry, insistent talk, which many people are persuaded by. A good portion of the population is persuaded by emotion and not the reasons in the argument. And then there's another type of argument which is based on logic and facts. It's a reasonable presentation, and it may be delivered in a tone of lucid, moderate. It's not emotional. In general, the assessment of in history is that generally the rhetoric, the wild proclamations, the heavy emotion, the drama, usually wins in elections and other events in life. It starts wars, etc. Very unfortunately, but it doesn't mean that it's the preferable means. It means that people should not be deceived by rhetoric, by emotional, heavily laden emotional talk. They should be refuse to assess it that way. They should look for the reasons and supported reasons and facts behind what is being presented, not how loud it is shouted. So that's in brief. And I probably will give a series of talks, on the YouTube channel, just for that purpose of showing people, especially younger people, teens and so forth, how to respond to this and how to be well and, in fact, completely well and undisturbed in the face of major possible disasters which could happen. And this is hanging over everybody's heads all the time. There's a vast number of nuclear weapons on the planet. When a 15-year-old starts to get knowledge about the fact that the world could be wiped out by nuclear war, how does that affect them? What about global, anthropocentric warming, global warming? What about that? What's their future, et cetera? How do they feel about that? How are they affected by that? Population structures, pollution, economic collapse, political wars, all kinds of these, of course, pandemics, and how are they to negotiate this? How are they to walk through this with some sense of well-being? The Buddha can answer that. He can say, in this very world that you see, with all of its possibilities of grand disasters, you can be well, happy, peaceful, and responsible as well, a good citizen contributing to kindness, clarity, and proper treatment of other people in the midst of this. So I will try to give more and more talks for that, because it's very, very important that I realize this is not a mystical tradition of meditation. This is not about just watching your left nostril or something like this. This is a philosophy which is entirely capable of managing a human life in this very present world in all of its dimensions. Okay, so I will move on to the next question.
Next question is from the live chat from Trace in Las Vegas, Nevada, United States. When I try to explain the 6 realms to other people, they seem to get lost. Is there another way to introduce that to people? I'm not sure how to do that.
Well, the 6 realms are usually a Tibetan circle of basic cosmology. So the higher realms, the heavenly realms, human realms, ghost realms, animal realms, hell realms, etc. And it's usually depicted on a kind of a circle. Shouldn't be so foreign to people. I think at least Catholic Christianity has a scheme of the universe, something like that. The what is called Dante's Divine Comedy. That he shows the universe as something like 30 levels, or so. In 3 sections. So heavens, and then the purgatorial realms, like ghost realms, and then the hell realms. I strongly believe that is borrowed from Buddhism. There's only 3 realms, and it's all to do with humans. What is left out is the animal realm. So Buddhism includes the animal realm, and we also have a scheme of this of 31 or 32 divisions of the universe, the cosmology of the universe. I think with the modern idea of evolution, it shouldn't be so strange also that we in modern times, if you accept evolutionary theory, that the human that humans have evolved out of animals. So we connect within animals is the latent possibility of human consciousness. And within human consciousness is the latent possibility of animal consciousness. So some humans can easily devolve into an animalistic kind of type of consciousness. They live at a level that is just purely impulse and just concerned with food and procreation. Others seem to be quite angelic. They, out of ordinary human consciousness, they seem to evolve into a kind of a transcendent angelic type of being, right as they walk around on this planet. And others seem to have devolved into ghostly kind of lives. They're living in back alleys and broken down in dark corners, kind of an unimaginable degradation of life in the squalid alleyways, and then there's even worse than that. There are this violent, cruel kind of killers and psychopaths. So you can see that this is the nature of consciousness itself. It can move in all of these dimensions. So it's just a kind of the outward presentation of what we can see right in this life. Of course, we can see the animal realm in this life and also see the human realm in this life. And within those consciousness, we can see there's quite a variety both within the animal realm. Now we're seeing it, acknowledging it, to the dolphins and monkeys and dogs and elephants. They're approaching some of the emotional levels of human. And human consciousness has a vast variety of possibilities and realized possibilities. So this is kind of the way you talk about it, but it's not something maybe that you present just over coffee as a flat kind of fact. you got to be careful about when and how you address this. If people really aren't asking you, then you might just say, I just saw a very interesting talk by a monk the other day about cosmology. It's on a YouTube channel. Something like that. You don't force any of this stuff on anybody, because you'll get a kind of a resistance usually. Okay, let's go on.
Next question is from Rita in Austin, Texas, United States. Conditioned Dhamma. All things are impermanent, subject to dependent arising. The unconditional certainly is not impermanent, but is it permanent? Or is such a question speculative and therefore not especially useful on the path?
Well, the unconditioned usually is NIBBANA, and NIBBANA is considered permanent, but shouldn't be interpreted as the problem is in understanding this thing called this NIBBANA. I mean, when we speak about it as a human attains NIBBANA, it means that NIBBANA is not a thing. It's not like, oh, you went to the moon. It is correspondence to the consciousness of an enlightened person. The mind of the person has fully processed the truth of the nature of things, of the way things are, the truth of the way things are, and they have nibbanad. They are the greed, hatred, and delusion has been extinguished. So nibbana, one way of talking about nibbana or nirvana, is the extinguishment of greed, hatred, and delusion, and the emotional distress that comes through those three things. And but they remain walking around, talking, etc. And what is their internal emotional state of the nibbanad person? I recommend you listen to some talks by a monk named Ajahn Sona called 7 Factors of Enlightenment to fully understand what is the consciousness of the enlightened person. What is it like to be an enlightened person? It is devoid of greed, hatred, and delusion, and generosity, kindness, and clarity are present. Joy is present. Serenity is present. Profound stillness, positive emotions are present. And so that's the nibbana of a living being. And at the death of a living being, what comprises a living being, the body, the feelings, the sensations, consciousness, perceptions, and volitions cease. It's very clear. The 5 khandhas, the 5 elements that would comprise a human, outside of which is nothing, and no extra ones inside, are cease at the death of an enlightened person. And that's permanent. It is irreversible. In other words, it's not temporary. So permanent, when we say permanent, means that it's not temporary. There's another word for this Dhamma, this truth, and it's called akaliko, which means not subject to time. Kaliko is time, and akaliko is timeless. It's something like eternal, with outside of time. Some would prefer to preserve something sort of unspeakable and unimaginable after the death of an enlightened being. If you so wish, feel free, but the easiest statements by the Buddha, the most processable statements by the Buddha are that the 5 khandhas, basically the description of a human, ceases without remainder at the death of an enlightened person. And that is permanent. In other words, not reversible. It's not. Don't think of it as a thing that exists forever, but that it is irreversible. Yeah. Okay.
Next question is from the live chat from Bob in Texas, United States. I know everyone is responsible for their actions, but would it be possible for me to carry others' negative karma so their load is lightened?
Well, Bob, that is a noble kind of wish. I mean, it's very compassionate, and some wish they could do it. But really, from the early school of Buddhism, which I am from, it's very clear that you cannot do that. That the Buddha repeatedly says, no one purifies another. You can't transfer your negative karma to another person. You can't transfer your positive karma to another person. You can't accept somebody else's negative karma or their suffering. You can't take it upon yourself. But it doesn't mean that you can't help others. And you help them by, if they're amenable to listening, you can help them. But somebody who is not listening, you can't help. And so, like a doctor can help a person, say somebody is drinking heavily and they fall down and smack their head on the sidewalk and they bring them to the hospital. The doctor's amenable to spending some time with them and stitching them up and bandaging them up and so forth. But if they stagger out on the sidewalk and go back to the bar, nothing you can do. But if they decide, well, they were affected by your kindness and they think, I got to stop drinking, this. So it's possible that somebody can be affected by your words, your action, your example, but you cannot actually transfuse. Like you can't do a karma transfusion. You can do a blood transfusion. You can give blood, but you can't give your goodness to another person, and you can't take on their negative karma. There is a practice particularly in the Tibetan school, which is called Tonglen, and it is kind of a visualization of breathing out towards the world, sort of light and loving kindness, and breathing in the darkness and ignorance and suffering of the world, breathing that in and breathing out, good things. We do not have that practice that's influenced by this Bodhisattva school, which is a much, from my point of view, it's a much later historical development, and it has features which are not found in early Buddhism. I would say that can make you sick if you're under the impression that you really can, take on other people's illnesses and so forth, or their emotional distress and so forth. You're probably going to make yourself sick. Out and light, and breathe it in as well. Breathe in light, loving kindness, and breathe out light and loving kindness. And that is the best thing you can do for yourself and the world. Right.
Next question is from Alyssa in Tamarack, Florida, United States. Your generous teachings are one gem after another. Will you be continuing the series on Buddhist psychology versus modern psychology? My kind of plan, the master plan of all of this stuff, which started quite a long time ago, was that I would start, especially with the basic teachings of the Pali Canon, the what I consider the historical Buddha, the best we can do to recapture the teachings of the historical Buddha. Approximately the Theravada school, but the Theravada is a later part. It's not the original. There was no such school as the Theravada or the Mahayana or any of these things at the time of the Buddha. So I go back to the earliest teachings, and I like to explain them in a very clear way to people,
on this new medium, this internet and so forth. And I start with small explanations, just brief explanation, 5-minute, 8-minute talks on the essential aspects. And then the next level, when we've done that, and first of all, we have to learn about how do you do this? You got to get a camera and a microphone and a setting and somebody who knows how to use them. And then I cough, and should we keep that in? Let's get that out. So we had to get the technical apparatus and decide how to present this. And it's obviously a summary or a brief thing, and then a middle-length explanation. And then finally, if I have time, to do an exhaustive explanation, like explore it in depth. And so now I've made 250 videos or something like this, covering most of that. And then my plan was to go on to more or less comment on the social dimensions, like what's going on in the world, how to bring a Buddhist attitude to the political situation, the current state of view about the morality, human morality, human psychology, even scientific attitudes, etc. How would Buddhism, how would the wisdom of the Buddha, the knowledge from Buddhism and wisdom, function and be practical in these conditions? Now, I've given 2 talks on Western psychology or modern psychology versus Buddhist psychology. And that's by all means not exhaustive. That's the kind of a brief summary of some of the things. So in the future, I probably would do a number of different talks on these kind of things. But this question and answer thing is a way of trying to accumulate hundreds of questions and answers so that these can be preserved and then you can access them. And we have it all, it's all marvelously time-stamped, and you can type in these things. And this required people with expertise in these areas that volunteered to do this. So everybody here is a volunteer, including me. I volunteer to do this. I mean, it's just something I guess as a monk, that's my job, but I don't get paid. I do get a bowl of food once a day. And the people here are also volunteers and people who are associated with the monastery who have expertise in these areas help with these things. So we accumulate this huge body of information, and I intend to keep going with this until I cover what I can. So that's my sort of the master plan. I'll let you in on it now. Yeah.
Next question is from the live chat from Holly in New Jersey, United States. Ajahn Sona, would you elaborate on how to, quote, put aside thoughts of greed and distress with reference to the world? Is it greedy to want physical comfort and not suffer?
No, and the Buddha's, the life of the Buddha shows you this, that he started out with a somewhat indulgent life, what we might call overindulgence, because he was from a family of royalty. And there's all kinds of descriptions that he gives of the palace life. It's as luxurious as possible you can possibly imagine, and somewhat and indulgent as you can imagine as well. So then he goes on an opposite thing of deprivation and starvation, self-starvation and abuse of the body and so forth, and then finally gives up. He says neither of these are satisfactory, but a middle path is, in which you treat your body. The body is not a problem. It needs to be kept from the elements. It can't be too cold. It can't be too warm. It needs to be fed and clothed and washed and medicine treated. So it needs to be kept reasonably comfortable. Yeah. Monk's life sometimes is thought by people to be very austere, but it's not meant to be harmful to the body. So you reflect every day on your requisites. You know, what the robes are for is to keep off flies and the sun and the wind, and to protect the body. And then you eat for the maintenance of health, and you get shelter to keep out of the elements, and you use medicines to keep the body going, and so forth. So it's a moderate, a middle path. And for the layperson, you can see that the lay people have a set of guiding precepts which are primarily moral, not about luxury or austerity. It's simply do not kill other living beings. They don't want to die, so don't kill them. Don't steal from people. Don't steal their possessions. They like them just like you like your possessions. They don't want you to steal their possessions. Don't steal their wife or their husband or their girlfriend or their boyfriend. Don't do that. That's very hurtful. That people really don't like that. So, you know, appreciation of other people's committed relationships. Don't be lying to everybody. Nobody likes that. You don't like to be lied to. Don't lie to people, and don't stay away from the drugs and the alcohol. It doesn't go well. It's a bad idea. Simple. But it doesn't say, don't go out to dinner. Never watch a movie. Don't go singing and dancing and so forth. That is not the constraints for the household life, the ordinary person's life. You don't have to wear any special clothes. You can wear your hair any way you want. Wear the shoes you want, or not. Have a good marriage, have kids if you want, whatever, you know. Go on holidays and swim and, you know, listen to music, whatever you want. These are not moral problems. What really makes a problem in life is this killing and stealing and lying and adultery and drugs and alcohol, as you see every day on the front page of the newspaper. Just a bloody mess of life if you step through those boundaries. For the rest, it's not really very important, you know. I think it's reasonable. Don't eat too much. Don't sleep too little, and don't sleep too much. Don't eat too much, and don't eat too little. You see this immense obesity, and then what's this other? Anorexia, nervosa. Don't do either of those things, you know, somewhere in the middle. Don't live outside in the winter half naked, and you don't need a mansion. If you want the burden, by all means, get a mansion, but if something reasonable. But so it's very, it's a moral attitude to life. It's a very easy guideline to follow. It'll just keep you out of trouble, and it's not uptight, no special clothes, you know. Yeah, okay, let's try the next question.
Next question is from Alexander in Sacramento, California, United States. If everyone was an arahant, what would the world and society look like?
Boring, very, very boring. I can't tell you how boring it would be. No movies, no singing, no dancing. Maybe we'll eat once a day, walk around in a bed sheet. No romance? No romance. Pretty well nothing. Just people sitting around meditating in bliss. So the world, well, from a worldly point of view, it doesn't sound very appealing, but that's what you get in a monastery, really. So, it's the it doesn't appeal to what we consider to be a kind of an interesting, culturally rich, worldly thing. But the arahants are experiencing a much higher and more refined happiness. It's better than you think. better than any. There's all kinds of social utopian communities in the past. You know, everybody thinks, what would be the perfect world where everybody's just, it's just art and music and abundance and superb food and clothing and everything. So that's people's idea of happiness. But for the more refined or spiritual person, that is that's boring. Now you're talking boring. And their ideal is a kind of a timeless serenity, a joyful, timeless stillness and serenity, indifferent to external situations, very self-contained. And that to the worldly person is inconceivable and unimaginably boring, and to the arahant, the fully enlightened person, the worldling life that people are preoccupied with is trivial and completely uninteresting. So you have these two views of things, and they don't share the same values. So that's how it would work. By the way, I don't think it'll ever happen. It's the least of your worries. The last thing you need to worry about is what if everybody was an arahant? I think you should start worrying about what if everybody was a hairdresser. Now, imagine that kind of world. Everybody is a hairdresser. How about everybody's a lawyer? Everybody's a lawyer. Now, that's scary. Okay, let's move on. Yeah.
Our next question is from John. Could Ajahn Sona please tell us the difference between Passaddhi and Pasada? Pasada.
And Passaddhi. They're spelled differently. I think Pasada has one S and Passaddhi has two S's. It is, but it is kind of, they are related. Serenity and Pasada is a kind of a tranquility. So I hope that helps. They're sort of, they're related. Yeah. What is it? There's a do a something Pasada, nibbana or something like that. What is it? Disappointment and Pasada has a quality of joy to it as well. Samvega Pasada. Samvega is like spiritual urgency, but also the urgency is mixed with disappointment or dispassion. And Pasada is kind of a serene, a joyful. Get a T-shirt where on the front it says Samvega, like I'm disappointed, and on the back it says, but I'm happy. So these two things are quite balanced in Buddhist teachings. The disappointment, the withdrawal from the ordinary world of sense pleasures and so forth, the trivialities that keep disappearing. You know, you just get it and it's gone. And you eventually get disappointed with this. You feel a sense of spiritual disengagement, ennui with the triviality of the change. Now you have to seek an alternative, which is a spiritual thing. But you can be disappointed and serene at the same time. So the Buddha says, if you look out at the world, there's a lot of things to be disappointed with. Should you feel badly about it? How should you feel about the facts of reality, that everybody dies, you lose everything? So everybody can and must get old, sick, die, and lose everything. And you have to be responsible for your good and bad deeds. In the face of that, how should you feel? Serenely joyful. So that's a very unintuitive kind of answer. Most people, the wiser person starts to think, this is quite a clown show, this business of life. It's quite when it's not a kind of a tragicomedy, it's just sheerly it's a slaughterhouse. And I feel bad about that. I feel very disappointed or angry. I think I'll drink. So that's kind of like they're kind of wise. They see it as it is, but their emotional response is not a wise emotional response to it. So you can see things as they are. You can see the facts of life, and yet it's much wiser to remain at ease and perhaps slightly joyful in the midst of this. Why wouldn't you? Why not? You have a choice. Yeah. So I think we have come to the very last minute of our Q&A. And do I need to refresh your memory about anything, except that we will be here next week, as far as we can predict something like that. And we will see you then.